to Pro Booth Talk, photo booth insight, tips, and banter recorded by boothers for boothers. Brought to you by ProBoothTalk.com.
Hi, Jason. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Pro Booth Talk.
Yes, welcome, everyone. So we're going to get into one of the many subjects of sales today, which is adapting to various clients. And I guess the reason, Lap, we were just discussing, because before each episode, a lot of these episodes I had kind of penciled out previously when I was recording in the past, and I just kind of brief Lap on the outline of what I was aiming at. And she was mentioning that should just be the intro to the podcast, and maybe it should be, but the reason I guess that we don't is because I try to stick to an outline to kind of work into that, because I feel like there's certain things that need to be discussed prior to kind of prep. But you're probably right. I mean,
I think the recaps that you give are so great, and it walks our listeners through like what to anticipate for the episode, the topics that we're going to be talking about.
But I feel like if we just did the recap in the beginning, then people could just turn it off after that. They got all the information.
The type of information we drop, though, that's, we talk about, we go off topic and we go into tangents, and there's always knowledge being shared.
Yes. So the recap for this episode came from a conversation I had with somebody at PBX. They were talking about or asking about issues they were having selling certain products, and the discussion was based on how specific products or the same product should be sold differently to different people. For example, if you have a basic photo booth package that has prints and props and a backdrop, depending on who you're selling that to, should have a different sales approach. For example, a mother of a bride may be more concerned about keeping within a budget, whereas a bride is more concerned with memories and selling the dream, basically painting the picture for them. Whereas if you're talking to someone who is planning a mitzvah, oftentimes they can be very competitive and they just want to one up the last mitzvah. So we always try to talk about like something that we did at the last mitzvah, because they typically will want something better, and it's just how it is. So there's lots of different clients, and each of them should be approached differently depending on what their needs are. And essentially, the first step of that is finding out what their needs are, actively listening, taking a phone call. A lot of people seem to be against getting on the phone. I mean, if you're more comfortable in email or text, or that's where your client wants to talk, I'm all for it, but you can certainly learn a lot more through a discussion if you get on the phone with somebody and actually talk about what their event is, and listen to what they need. And it's never a photo booth. Like if I ask you what your client is looking for the event and your answer is a photo booth, then I can tell you right away you're not listening to the needs of your client, because you need to know the why of why they want that photo booth. Are they looking for something to entertain their guests? Are they interested in collecting data so that they can market to their guests later? Are they more worried about brand awareness and fostering loyalty from their clients? Are they trying to create a social media footprint? Are they concerned about the memories or impressing somebody? Are they just concerned strictly about a budget? So there's several different things that clients are looking for, and your job obviously is to adapt to their needs to offer them the correct solution. Not only offer them the correct solution, but offer them the solution in the correct way, I guess.
Absolutely. Asking them the right questions, qualifying them, the whole thing of like, what's the goal of your event? What's the goal for the photo booth? Like, what goals do you have for the photo booth? I think those are questions that you want to ask to make sure that you're prepared to find that solution for them. And I think you're totally right. Like, if you have the same exact sales approach to a corporate client as you do to a wedding, there you have to reassess how you're approaching it, because a corporate client doesn't care about a corporate client doesn't care about the photo booth being beautiful, memorable. They care about metrics, they care about numbers, they care about you being easy to work with, you being experienced. um, so ask them, ask them the right questions. I think a lot of people skip through that process and they right away like throw out the numbers, they throw out like what makes them so amazing, they throw out like why are we the best photo booth for you, and you really don't know what exactly they're looking for you to be the best photo booth. Are you really the best photo booth for them?
Yeah, and the best photo booth in what aspect? It's the same thing when people come onto our groups and say, "What's the best software?" and everyone attacks them and says, "Well, best for what? What are your goals?" And
Exactly.
it's the exact same thing. If you think you're the best photo booth, well, best at what? What are the goals of your
Exactly.
client? And it's the same thing. And people tend to separate themselves. They're fast to say that you need to be more specific when you're looking for the quote unquote best software, but then they kind of keyhole themselves when they're saying that they are the best photo booth. So it's again just finding out what the client's needs are and creating the best solution that fits that need. So,
And you might not be the best solution. I've asked clients like, what is the goal for your photo booth? And their answer has been, we're looking for the cheapest photo booth we can find. And right away, we aren't the best photo booth for you, because if you are
mm-hmm.
looking for the cheapest, that's just not us. If you're looking for cheap, not quality, not a great experience, you're just looking for someone that's, offering subprime rates, we're not, that saves you a lot of time, because we're not that company. So asking those right questions makes a difference of like, maybe we aren't the photo booth for you. Maybe we
Yeah.
aren't. Maybe you're looking for someone who has experience with like the creative. If you're looking for something engaging, if you're asking your client like, what's the goal, and their answer is, we're looking for something unique, creative, and out of the box, you might not have that capability. You might not have the ability to deliver something that's outside of just 4x6 prints or 2x6 strips, and that those questions matter, because you can sit there and talk about what great service you have, but if you can't deliver what they need to achieve the goals of their event, you really are wasting your time going through, pricing, and, ask them the questions of like what they want. What in your last, if it's corporate, who did you use before us? What did you like about them? What didn't you like about them? Ask as many, the more questions you can ask your client, the easier it'll be for you to find the solution to what they need. If they tell you, we had a photo booth, for like 5 years and they were great, and they'll tell you, this is what we didn't like, and this is why we're looking for a new photo booth provider. You might be that one that can actually deliver what the old company couldn't do. Not necessarily that they were bad, they just might not have had the broad offerings that you might have. They might be a little bit limited on like availability. There could be several reasons, but if you don't ask, you really will be selling blind. I think part of the
Yes.
biggest thing of a great sales experience is like knowing who your client is, what they're looking for, what their problem is. It's not really, like you were saying, it's not a photo booth. It's, they have a problem they need a solution for, be it a wedding, be it a brand marketing event. And your job is to ask all the questions needed to find out like, why are you looking for a photo booth? What do you need your photo booth to do? And how can we best deliver the services that you need to make your event, to achieve the goals of your event? Every event has different goals.
Yeah, and I want to point out some of those questions that you were asking. What did you like about your past photo booth company and things like that? Lap's not saying, did you like your last photo booth company? We always want to stick with the open-ended questions, create a conversation, ask things that are that you can expand on, that you can actually get information from, instead of just yes or no's, because that doesn't really give you information. So open-ended questions are very, very important. Understand what they're looking for and what type of person they are, because we've got different personality types, obviously. So people need to be sold to in the different types of personality types that they fit into.
Coaches.
There's
Yeah.
lots of different studies and metrics for different personality types, but you should just find something very basic that works for you. And that just reminded me of when I was in school, they brought up a Netflix specifically because their marketing approach they will show you different movie or television posters or thumbnails based on your viewing history or the type of person that you are. So, for example, maybe like I don't know, Good Will Hunting. If you watch more love stories, it may show you a thumbnail with Minnie Driver and Matt Damon. Whereas if you watch a lot of Robin Williams movies, it may show you a thumbnail of Robin Williams. So it's always adapting the sale to its client. In fact, they got into some controversy a couple of years ago because they were doing a lot of race-based promoting. So if you're a white viewer, a lot of your thumbnails would have white actors, and if you're a black viewer, a lot of your thumbnails would have black actors for the same movies. And they deny that, but it's an interesting study. Look into it. There's a lot of conversation about how they were marketing to people, not only through race but through your viewing habits and the things that you're interested in. So something to look into. But basic personality types, I've got a list over here, so I'm going to read for a second. So you've got your driver, which are results driven. Details aren't as important, so they just want you to get to the point. They just know that they have a task to complete, and if you're trying to paint them a picture and sell them experience, you're probably not going to make the sale. They're typically a corporate client, or they got tasked with booking something that they don't really want to book. They just need the numbers, and they just need to make a decision to clear it off their plate.
They want you to worry for them. Yeah.
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 The analytical person
they want you to handle everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Take it off their plate. You do all the hard work. You do the heavy lifting. You send over the documents that they're going to use to impress somebody, and that's it.
Yes.
Then you've got the analytical person, who is very detail driven, opposite of the driver. And details obviously are crucial to this person. So you want to be able to give data, descriptions, past results. Again, you don't really want to get too much of selling experience or emotions, because these people care more about data and spreadsheets. And again, these are going to be a lot of your marketing clients. They want to know what kind of reach your last activation had with a similar brand, if they're concerned about social media reach, or what number of
throughput. Yeah. Providing a deck so they can visually see
you collected, or the throughput. Yes. So how many photos can you take, or how fast does it happen? Especially if you're doing something unique like a swag, like if you're pressing buttons or something, they definitely want to know how many you can do an hour and things like that. Next, you've got, I lost my, where I was looking, the amiable, which are relationship driven. These are the people that you hear most about. You want to take your time. You want to build the rapport, ask about their kids or where they're from. They are very much based on relationship decisions. So you need to take that extra time, and if it's worth it to you to close those deals. And then finally, the expressive, which are the creative driven. This is where you really want to sell the experience. Talk about how the guests are going to feel, talk about the full experience, essentially paint a very visual picture of what everyone is going to go through, and the memories that are going to be made, and how beautiful things are going to look to complete their celebration and things like that. And the personality types, driver, analytical, amiable, and expressive, these are very, very well covered in several marketing books. If you want to read more about these and the best sales approaches for each of those four, there is an ample, unlimited supply of information for you to research with those. So I just wanted to kind of touch on those personality types. I'm not going to get too deep into them because, like I mentioned, there's plenty of places that you can go for that.
I think it's pretty important that when you have your clients that you're pitching to, your perspectives, that you kind of mirror who they are. Basically, that's basically what we're breaking it down to. Someone who is very numbers driven. You want to focus on graphs. You want to focus on metrics. Someone who's going to be
and taking some very specifics under the same note. So I mentioned in the beginning in the recap, typically a couple or a bride or a groom will be more interested in the visuals. They'll want the dreams sold, the memories, that talking about the album and how much their guests are going to enjoy having a takeaway and remembering this time forever and things like that. Where the couple's parents are typically going to be more concerned with the budget and making sure the needs are met. They'll like to hear about backup plans and things like that. They're definitely more driven with the data of things more often. Holiday parties, you're going to have a lot of budgets. A lot of people, like, they'll say they've got a corporate event. First of all, I don't really like the term corporate event because it's too broad. For example, like many cocktail parties aren't corporate events. Many holiday parties aren't corporate events. So in our internally, we use the term private event, which will cover like weddings and things like that. And
Yes.
and I think most people call those social events. And for what most people call corporate events, we call marketing events because we feel that's more descriptive. We don't call a company holiday party a marketing event because they're not marketing. So
Right.
that will fall into our social or private event category. So when you're discussing specifically with like holiday parties, they will be very budget driven, and a lot of times people will be confused that they're getting a corporate job, but they have a very short budget, and that's typically because it's like a holiday party. You know, if you're doing an event for, I don't know, Google at a trade show, they've got a near endless budget because they have different goals. Their goals are to build brand awareness and foster loyalty to their brand. Whereas if their corporate office is having a holiday party or an employee appreciation party, that office typically has a very tight budget that they have to work in within the year. And their budget, obviously, for those types of parties are going to be very small as well. So if you're seeing, oh, this is Google, they've got endless money, I'm going to overquote them, you probably won't get the job because their holiday parties and their employee appreciation parties have small budgets, and it's not a marketing event. It's a social event. You're going to go set up in a cafeteria of their local chapter, and employees are going to come take photos in between office meetings and things like that. So it's a very different animal. So budgets and team building and that type of thing are more important for that client. Again,
Yes.
I guess it's kind of stereotyping here, but we do find mitzvah parents are very concerned with outdoing the other mitzvahs. It may not be true in your demographic, but for us, we've seen that quite a bit. So whenever we're talking to parents about mitzvahs, we are always mentioning what other people have done because they typically will want to do more, and talk about the responses that we got from things and the takeaways and how big things are going to be and how impressive things are going to be. And that's the direction that we take those type of things. Then marketing events, of course, like you mentioned earlier, we're very data driven. We are very visual with the concepts and branding, because that's what people care about. They care about the presentation. They care about the details. They want to make sure whatever their goals are that they're being heard and being reached.
I mean, I definitely think that your approach on different clients, I know you brought up Google and you brought up like, sometimes if Google is doing an event at a trade show, they have a goal in mind that they're trying to achieve. But if you're doing, a company party for employees, it's going to be a different goal. But that's part of you making sure that you're asking the right questions, because not all events are going to have the same weight for your client. So like, for instance, Google, if you're just doing an office party, it might just be an office party with just the staff in-house. But then Google also hosts events where they're inviting like their VIPs, their CEOs, for, not CEOs, but like their department leads or division leads, where they have high profile employees that are on site that aren't going to be as laid back as a regular employee or staff member. asking those right questions makes a huge difference on you being able to like I feel like with corporate it's a lot of like reassuring them that you are a professional, you know what you're doing, and they don't have to think twice about you delivering the services. So an example of this is we had a client that called in, and you know they described like they were rolling out some new technology for the company, and they were celebrating, you know, the release that was approaching. So they had high profile staff members that aren't normally in that office, and the concern was, you know, asking the right questions. I found out that the concern was making sure that we provide an experience that's engaging. Um, and a 360 is super engaging. I know, you know, it's moving a different direction with, we're moving a different direction with video, but at that time, 360s were very engaging for a lot of our clients. And the concern wasn't if it was engaging, the concern was if it was too engaging and too extra for, you know, these guys that are like suit and tie type folks that are a little bit more reserved. And if you're able to qualify your client, you're asking those questions. That's how I found out, like, okay, the concern isn't if the photo booth is going to be fun because we love your team is really engaging, really fun. We're actually concerned that you're too extra. You know, you always hear about me talking about how like fun and engaging my team is. There are events where that's a concern, where you might, your staff might overwhelm the guests and the clientele that's on site. So asking those questions, and sometimes it's not that you have to change who your company is. It's just educating. People approach sales like you're like shoving services down someone's throat and trying to like just hurry up and sign, hurry up, and you know, we're gonna run out of photos. And it's not a great approach, regardless of whether it's a bride or a corporate. It's having that discussion, and they need the reassurance that they are investing in a sound decision booking you. So when this client approached me and, you know, discussed the concerns and was like, you know, we're actually worried that you're gonna scare off some of these like suit and tie type guests that we're going to have, you know, reassuring them that, you know what, our team has done this for a long time. We are really great about like finessing our way into getting someone up onto the 360 without being overbearing, and reassuring them that they don't have to be concerned about, because your corporate clients are going to be worried about the embarrassment of booking a bad provider. And this is a reality. There's people who book photo booths and they're like, okay, I think this photo booth is going to be great. That photo booth shows up and they do a horrible job, and it goes back to the person who was given the job of hiring and sourcing the photo booth provider. So that's actually a big concern for a lot of, you know, your companies. You know, this person is not a planner. They were just dropped onto their desk. It was just dropped onto their desk like, oh, you have to find the photo booth for this event where all these, you know, important people are going to show up. So they just want to know, you know, they just want to hear the reassurance that you are a safe, sound decision and you're going to deliver to them a great experience. These high profile staff members that are going to show up there a little bit, you know, they're not as chill as the rest of the guests, their staff. We're gonna make sure they have a great time. You know, that reassurance is the difference. It's not even about the photo quality. Sometimes it's not about, you know, how engaging your team is. Sometimes it's just the reassurance that they need, like that they are making a sound decision. And you know when there's that concern if you're asking a whole bunch of questions. You know, if you don't have sales experience, definitely take on a course. I mean, I have like 11 years of sales experience. So when I pitch to clients, it's very natural for me because I was trained in like very traditional sales background where, you know, I remember like the company I worked for them for like, gosh, like 3 or 4 years. When I was onboarded, they gave me a whole booklet, and we actually had to go through every single question on the booklet like a robot. And it becomes where if you're doing that every single day, you know, 15, 20 prospects per day, you start to adapt that sales process and it becomes natural. And that's really what you should be doing. You know, you should be role playing if you can. You know, it's going to feel very uncomfortable. I mean, I've been through like wireless sales training, corporate, where they sent me off for a week. I worked for like 2 or 3 wireless companies, and their sales background, their sales training is very intensive. Do a lot of role playing, and it feels unnatural. It's not, I don't know a lot of people that feel comfortable with the whole sales process initially. But if you're able to like force yourself into these role plays, and with your family, with your friends, with your peers, like photo booth friends and things like that, I mean, you really can find your footing to feel comfortable, because that's the biggest thing in sales is like your clients can hear. You can sit through, and you can sit there and go through a full-on scripted sales pitch, but your client will be able to read the vibes from you if you're confident, if you're comfortable. And that's really the difference of like winning the sale or not. If your clients have confidence because they can feel that you have that confidence, then they know they're making a sound decision.
Yeah, and that role playing, we do that internally with our salespeople. Besides learning sales techniques and getting better at that, it's also a good tool. And in fact, it's why we do it, to better learn all your services, and to know more about them and the questions that could come up. Because if you have more than just a standard photo booth or a standard photo booth plus album, it becomes a lot to remember, and all the logistics and details of those, and the load in times or the footprint, like it becomes a lot. So we do role playing, and we basically will say, sell me a virtual booth, and we'll go through and we'll ask different questions, and just basically keep those things on the top of mind for the salespeople, because some of those things just don't come up very often, and we want them
Yeah.
to be able to speak intelligently and confidently about all the products that we offer.
Yeah. And one of the things, like you and me, we offer so many services. Sometimes it can be very, very overwhelming. So if someone calls in, if it's a wedding, you usually have like wedding package that kind of fits like 95% of all of your brides.
Right.
It's just when you're selling to a bride, you're not really selling your services. You're not really selling like, you're selling more of like a vision to them of like the perfect day. So again, like you were saying, you're selling a dream to them. So you're pitching to them based on emotion, and reassuring them that, we're a great photo booth company. I really don't go into like photo quality. I don't go into backdrops. I know a lot of companies like talk about like all the backdrop options they have. That's all great. And some brides will book a photo booth based on the backdrops you have. And again, that goes into you asking those questions like, why did you reach out to us? What about us did I? And the bride will usually tell you, well, we saw this backdrop that you had that we really love. Qualifying is important. But when it comes down to like actually, once you've pitched, you found out what they're looking for, and then you're trying to overcome their objectives. Like, I lost my train of thought.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you're saying, it just comes down to asking the right questions and knowing how to approach those. And the same tactics don't work for everybody. Like we
Yes.
mentioned, mentioning backup equipment and backup protocols to a couple's parents for a wedding. But
Yes.
like, as important as those things are to like the marketing clients, we don't mention backup equipment because it's kind of
They
just
assume.
expected, like
Yes.
it's the same thing as if you're going to a hotel and they're like, and we clean our toilets. But why are you telling me that? Like, I already
Yeah.
expected that you cleaned your toilets. And it's the same thing. And if you're telling, how I view it anyways, if I'm telling a marketing client that we have backup equipment, then it almost paints that as that's a big deal to us when it shouldn't be. It should just be standard.
Yeah.
So unless
But
they're
to a bride,
asking,
yes.
exactly.
To a
And if they're
bride, they don't
asking,
even
it's because
think.
they had a bad experience with somebody in the past that didn't have backup equipment,
Yeah.
and you can get into that conversation.
Exactly. For marketing and corporate, they just assume that you have backup equipment. They have, so many events that they run that they've seen it all. For bride, they likely have never hired a photo booth. So they're not even thinking like of backup equipment until you bring it up. When you bring it up, they're like, okay, wow, this company they know what they're doing for them to even bring up backup equipment, because I hadn't even thought about backup equipment in the first place. But what
Yeah,
I was
and
saying a little bit
sometimes they don't
earlier.
know. Sometimes they don't know, like you'll ask, what's your goals with the photo booth, and it's maybe a bride or something, and they're like, I don't know. It was on a list that I downloaded from the Knot that I'm supposed to get a photo booth.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect opportunity to engage and just ask about their celebration, and kind of they don't know what they're looking for, and you can kind of guide them and help them, and that really builds a rapport and a relationship, because at the end of the day, even if you're the most expensive and you're offering the exact identical package to somebody else, like you literally have the same website and everything, they're going to go with the person that they have built like a rapport and trust with, even if they're paying more money. So having that conversation, and it comes down to like, pick up the phone, even if it's uncomfortable to you. Pick up
Yes.
the phone, and I know more and more clients are moving away from the phone, but as long as we're able to call people, we will definitely be calling people, because that rapport is just so important.
Yeah, and with brides, getting on the phone is important because they really buy based on off emotion. If you can make that connection with the bride, regardless of what you're selling them, they're gonna book someone that they feel is people do business with friends. That's the reality. And part of the sales process is, making that 60-second friend and reassuring them why you're a great fit for them. And for brides, it's completely, I feel like it's very, very much emotional, like the dream wedding, the dream day. And, if you're able to sell on that emotion. And one of the biggest things that I've learned through like the sales trainings that I've been through is like eye contact, if possible. I know we work through the phone mostly, but there is like people pick up things over the phone. So role playing in person, role playing over the phone, it'll help you pick up on cues. I don't even know how, it's like nonverbal cues. I think that's what the sales process calls it, nonverbal cues. So over the phone, you'll hear things. You'll hear like short silences, or if you're shaking your head, they feel that, and on the other line you can feel them shaking their head. I don't know how to describe it, because I've been in sales by phone for like 2 or 3 years. At first I didn't understand what that was, but if you go through that role playing, you'll pick up exactly what I'm talking about, where if they're smiling, you can hear that they're smiling. If they're agreeing with you, you can hear it through the line. For brides, I usually pitch the whole dream. To corporate clients, I pitch more like the efficiency of what we bring, the experience of what we bring, and just the fact that like they are hands off. Like once they book us, they don't really have to worry about anything. We already know, we understand and know logistics. We understand and know like venues and things that we have to overcome before they even have to. So they don't have to worry about the small details. And the corporate clients, that's a huge thing. They don't want to worry about like how you're going to get into the venue. That's the last thing they want to worry about. That's your job to worry about. And as a professional, when you're pitching it, you talk about the experiences. They hear it. You can't even fake the experience. They hear it in you. If you know what
Right.
logistics are, they're gonna know if you're faking it or if you've actually experienced having to overcome different things, like going through the loading dock, going through security checks. They're gonna know if you're sitting there saying it. Our team has to account for early arrival because we have to go through security checks, and the loading dock, we have to add like an extra 2 hours to that because of a lot of times it's scheduled loading dock times. Your client will hear that you have experience with that, and that's reassuring to them.
Yeah, definitely. So, in closing, I guess the biggest takeaway is consider yourself a problem solver more than a salesperson. Listen, find the problem, find what they're trying to solve, what issue they're trying to solve, and offer a solution for that. Self audit your calls. Obviously, we do this already. As soon as we hang up, we're like, oh, dang, we should have mentioned this, or we should have talked about that. But, more thoroughly go through those calls and try to decipher and think about, did I properly find the problem that they're trying to solve, and think of better questions you could have asked. And that's really the only way you're going to get better. Of course, like Lap mentioned, doing role playing, you can use family members are important because they don't know anything about photo booths. When you're talking to peers, the questions are almost canned. But also it's important to talk to your peers as well. So if you have some peers in the industry, you can jump on a call and role play with each other. You're welcome to call up and schedule a time with our sales team here and do role playing with them. They could use the extra back and forth always. I love any kind of education, even if it's just practice. And I think that's about it. Do you have any closing thoughts, Lap?
How to close the sale, or even to like follow up. I think that's a huge part of the process. Not everybody who you get on the phone with that moment is going to be ready to book. So I always try to leave an open-ended, like, hey, I know we are talking about a whole lot of things. It's a lot of information to absorb. So I'd love to like schedule in a call with you, sometime this week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday morning. Let me know if either of these work. So that way, any questions that, because we're covering so much information, any questions that, you might come up with after we get off this call, I want to make sure to address it. I think that's really important. Like, open up that window so that you can follow up and you're not doing it annoyingly. If they anticipate you're going to follow up with them, they're gonna be ready for you.
Yeah,
and sometimes
it's a good brief summary of follow up. I think following up is a deep enough subject, and I see enough questions about it that we could probably do an entire episode on following up on sales and how to do it appropriately and how often and how many times, which I guess is the same thing. How often and how many times. But I think we could probably flesh that out and to answer a lot of people's questions. So if you have any questions about follow up with sales, send them over to us so we can include those in the episode whenever we do that.
Yeah.
And as always, join us on YouTube if you're not already. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're podcasting. Jump over to Facebook and join our
Facebook group,
Booth Talk community, and TikTok, all the places. Come hang out with us. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Help to keep this free information coming. Subscribe to Pro Booth Talk in iTunes or Stitcher Radio. And while you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star rating. Finally, watch for show updates at facebook.com/ProBoothTalk.